Welcome back to some new r/malicious compliance stories, where people comply to the letter, but not the spirit of a request. I hope you had a great day. The first story is called Keep It. Some years ago, I was 25 and broke up with my girlfriend. Where we lived, we had a 1-month notice to leave our apartment. In order not to pay 2 rents, I had to wait until the end of the notice before moving out. In the end, she kept the apartment with a new roommate, but we still had to pass the landlord's inspection to get our security deposit back. I moved out something like 5 days before the inspection date. Living with someone you dump for almost a month can be hard. She was either trying to convince me to stay with her or trying to make my life miserable because I dumped her. As you can guess, when I moved out, I wasn't thrilled to know that I'll have to come back some days later to refill holes, repair some stuff and clean the apartment with her before the inspection. But hey, I'll do it. So just before leaving, sitting in my car, about to start the engine, she tells me, "You'd better really help me for the cleanup. You either clean really good or you keep the security deposit." This discussion wasn't in English. The way she worded it could mean either a threat or a choice. The tone and context sure enough clarified that it wasn't supposed to be a choice. I don't love doing chores, but cleaning isn't an issue for me. For her, most of it isn't either. But in the 7 years we were together, she never cleaned the toilets or the bathtub drain because it disgusted her. So I did, and she did other stuff to compensate. Money-wise, I was a working IT engineer, and she was a student. So the security deposit may be huge for her, but I didn't care that much. So I simply replied, "Okay." She looked at me a bit confused, not understanding my answer. I said, "Okay, keep the deposit and do it all by yourself." I didn't wait for an answer, drove off, and when I arrived, I messaged the landlord with my ex in CC, telling them to send the full deposit to my ex and none to me, and I never set foot in this apartment again. The next story is called 40 Hours a Week. Years ago, I worked for a company that tried to skate by with as little labor overhead as possible. They'd hire underqualified people and then expect top results. Management was a husband and wife who ran the company like it was a Fortune 500 company. We had 30 to 40 employees. They'd implement all sorts of policies, most of them very arbitrary and very micromanaging. One of the policies they created was a mandatory 40 hours policy. If you missed any work Monday to Friday, you'd have to come in on Saturday to make it up. No excuses accepted. If you didn't come in on Saturday to make up the time, you'd get a strike. 3 strikes and you are gone. One day, I needed to take off from work half an hour early, and I cleared it with my on-site boss. On Friday, one of the owners called me and said she's double checking to make sure I'll be there on Saturday. I explained that it was only a half an hour I missed, and she said there were no excuses accepted. I needed to work my 40 hours, otherwise I'd get a strike. I told her okay, and I'd be there on Saturday. I get to the site on time for 7 AM roll call. The on-site boss starts telling people what projects they are going to work on. There are about 15 people on site, and I deliberately stand in the back, waiting. By the time the boss makes it to me, it's about 7:25 AM. He starts detailing my job, and I cut him off and explain that I'll be leaving in 5 minutes. He looks at me and asks why. I explained to him that I was told I needed to work my 40 hours, and that since I missed half an hour of work, I only needed to make up half an hour and would be leaving at 7:30 AM. He asked why can't I stay all day and get the overtime. I replied that I'm only required to work 40 hours and that I have plans. I left promptly at 7:30 AM and had a great weekend. Come Monday, I got a "We are disappointed that you choose not to stay to help your coworkers" speech from the bosses, and that was about it. That policy went away a few weeks later. The last story is called Do What I Say. Around the beginning of 2020, I landed a job at a well-known US fast food chain. The GM was a tall, stocky, bald guy. Really liked my interview. So from the beginning, he told me that he hired me with the intention of making me a manager someday soon. So I worked hard every day, proving my worth, often doing the work of a full staff, around 7 to 8 people, all by myself. I worked this hard because my previous job had just laid me off due to the negative influence of 2020 on the hospitality industry. And so I was just happy to have a job. In order to become a manager, you had to take the ServSafe exam. Usually you'd get promoted whether or not you passed the exam, but per state law, there was always to be a ServSafe certified manager on duty at all shifts. Given that there were so few of us, 3 including myself and GM, that ServSafe cert was invaluable. One day, in the middle of my shift, the GM approached me with a book to study for my certification. I'm excited because I know that this means a promotion and a significant pay raise. I study this book like my life depends on it, with every free moment that I get throughout the day spent in the book. I'm a quick study and I progress really well through the book, but there's one major issue. The more I read, the more I discovered that there were so many health violations happening at the workplace. A lot of these fast food workers aren't paid enough to care about cleanliness. Most places will be okay with the appearance of cleanliness. I decided to approach the GM about my concerns, hoping that we could get to work on fixing a few things. Instead, I am met with him snarling back at me. Just do what I say. I am shocked. Then he begins to make my life as miserable as he can. He would intentionally short-staff the shifts that I worked, because he knew that I wouldn't complain about doing extra work. And then, when our numbers suffered, because there were literally 3 of us doing the work of 7 to 8 people, he would bark at me at the beginning of the next shift, in the presence of my coworkers. He went in deep, calling me worthless and all types of names just to degrade me. He would normally threaten my job about 2 to 3 times during a shift. I actually began to gaslight myself into believing that I was in the wrong and to just work harder. It didn't really click that I wasn't doing anything wrong until one day when I stopped by during the morning shift. I worked nights to check in on something, and I noticed the morning manager clock in and go back outside to smoke and have breakfast. I was so shocked because no one said anything. I approached one of the morning guys that I knew I could trust and asked him if this was a normal occurrence. He said yes, along with so many other things that this female manager got away with, that I would probably be fired on the spot for. During this entire fiasco, after many breakdowns, where I would go to the freezer to cry, I did it. I passed the ServSafe exam. I was very proud of myself. If my life was miserable before, I don't have the words to begin to describe what my life became after getting certified. On a random Tuesday morning, I'm still recovering from last night's shift when I get a phone call from one of the morning employees. She can barely get a word out in utter shock, but I made out that she was saying, "They just fired GM." I let out this maniacal laughter that I am sure my entire neighborhood heard. I laughed to the point of crying. Apparently, the store was doing so bad that it caught corporate's attention. They sent a couple of guys to do an audit, and they pointed out every violation that I had previously pointed out to the GM. It was so bad that they fired him on the spot. The corporate guys became our acting GM. The store had to be shut down for a couple of days to fix everything. To make matters worse, his wife left him after he was fired. Apparently he was cheating on her with the morning shift manager. It all made sense now, how she got away with anything. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please don't forget to leave a like, comment and subscribe. And if you have time, watch another one of my videos. And now, I hope you have a great day. See you soon. Bye bye.